the right screen. I'm in my strange place, called the office today, on my office rotation. So I got the 2 screen thing going. So hopefully I won't mess that up.
That's so super nice. I miss my 2 screens. I forget how, life was with 2 big screens. I just got this little laptop. I actually brought home one of my computers, but then it just seemed too clunky in my office. I couldn't get it set up right. So
yeah.
Anyway, okay, let's get started. Yeah, that's right. It is. So hi, everybody that's just joining us. This is meant to be a very, very informal networking event. This is taking the place of those times that we would all just be hanging out in my office, drinking coffee and eating snacks, eating chocolate and all sorts of good things. So please just relax and enjoy. This is meant to be super informal and just a lot of fun. So to that end, I invited like the funnest people I know to come and tell us a little bit about their awesome jobs, because I think they all have sort of what we would consider the dream jobs, right? They're working in international education and in different capacities. And so I thought it would be great for those of you that are thinking about going into that field or want to change into another area of that field, or just are working in that field now and want to get to know others in the program that are. I thought it would be great just for all of us to get together and just, hang out and talk. So I'm going to start with Erin, and I think we'll just let each student sort of introduce themselves as they go through just a brief introduction, a little bit about themselves and their career and where they work. And then if I can figure out how to do it, which is a big if, we will go into breakout rooms and let you talk with them individually. So hopefully it works out. So, Erin?
Yeah, and actually, I just want to make sure everyone can see the screen okay. If there's an issue, let me know. And I think actually Brian is up first. If I can advance.
Okay, Brian.
No, that's fine. Let me ask you a quick question first, Dr. Witt. Do you want it to go by question? Right, so do you want it to be more interactive where we go by question and then across people, or do you want?
Let's be as interactive as we can. So whatever you think works best. I mean, you guys, I don't care. Do whatever you want.
Okay, I thought just at this moment, I thought it might be better to switch off speakers that way and kind of
let's do. So everyone can kind of talk about different things, and yeah, let's do that. That sounds fun.
Okay. So thank you again for having me. My name is Brian Egan. Thank you everybody for attending this social coffee hour of sorts, interactive coffee hour, if you will. But again, thank you. My name is Brian Egan. Currently, I am a second-year student in the EPOL EDD program, and I have a concentration in global studies. I'll tackle the next questions, that way we're not going across on that sort of brief topic. But what else did I want to talk about? So a little bit about me. So academic background, I guess, as you see up there. My undergraduate degree is in political science. I specialize in Latin American and Caribbean studies. I also studied Spanish as an undergraduate, lots of study abroad experience. I'll get into that a little bit later. And my undergraduate degree is from Michigan State, as well as my master's degree, which is in Student Affairs Administration. So I'll pass it off next to the other stuff, and then I can come back to my position later.
I don't know if Joy hopped in.
Sorry, hi, Erin, Erin, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Hi, everyone. Okay, was I muted on purpose? Okay. Okay, sorry everyone. Hey, it's really great to be here with you. My name is Joy Papuvanen. I am currently the Director of Illinois Abroad and Global Exchange here at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And Illinois and Global Exchange, also called IAGE, IAGE, is the campus study abroad and exchange office here at the university. So I actually work with Dr. Witt pretty closely on different things. prior to coming to Illinois, so I've been here since 2013, and I came as an assistant director for curriculum integration and have found growth opportunities here at Illinois in this office. But prior to that, I was working at the City University of New York in New York City at the central office there as the international education coordinator for about 6-7 years, looking at primarily education abroad policies and sort of infrastructural things like health insurance abroad and that type of thing, policies that didn't exist at all in order to really support the growth of education abroad at the CUNY system, which is the public university system of the city of New York. And prior to that, I worked in higher education in alumni engagement for about a year. And then prior to that, my background was in refugee and immigrant services. And I taught ESL for a year as well. My undergrad is in comparative religious studies. I studied abroad in India during that time, and my master's is in sustainable international development. And I am currently, I don't know what cohort I'm in. I feel like I've just been taking classes in the PhD program. My first concentration is human resources development, and I just added global studies as my second concentration. So I'm interested in sort of the intersection of career and international ed. So research topic TBD, but it's really nice to, and Allison will keep me going in the program, I guess. It is quite, I think, a commitment, and I'm looking forward to sort of learning with you all and supporting each other through this. Thanks.
So that puts me next. I'm Courtney Smith. I currently live in Lexington, Kentucky, where I'm the Director of Global and Intercultural Engagement, which is just a super fancy and long way of saying Director of Study Abroad. Can't tell you how many times people mess up my title. So just think of it as Director of Study Abroad. I got my undergrad at Transylvania University, so I'm back where I started, which is really exciting. And it was in psychology, but it was my study abroad experiences in undergrad that made me realize I wanted to work in the field. So as soon as I graduated, I had a Fulbright and taught English in Slovakia for a year. And then after that, I went and got my master's in international ed from George Washington in DC. And then now I'm in the EDD program here at Illinois with global studies concentration. So I love everything about international education. I'm super passionate about study abroad, but as I'll talk to everybody about later, I think it's really important no matter what side of international ed you're on, that you kind of have a broad sense and knowledge of the whole field. So I work in study abroad, but I'm also passionate about international students and services and all of that too.
All right, and I think that makes me next. There we go. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Erin Gayheimer. I am also a second year EPOL Global Studies student in the online EDD program. And in terms of professional work, I work at the University of Dayton in the Office of Education Abroad, which I'm currently sitting in, which is a rare occasion these days, but today was a kind of serendipitous day that I was here. I serve as the senior programs coordinator in the office. That means that I work with a lot of faculty on faculty-led programs to Europe, to Latin America, to Asia, and those take place typically in the summer. So lots of work with faculty and coordinating their sort of visions for programs, and then building those logistically. In terms of background for education, I have sort of a mix of things I've studied. As an undergraduate, I was a sociology and Spanish major, and then for my master's studied international relations, so kind of more political science. And then I also have a TESOL certificate that I sort of picked up a couple of years ago, which has been really valuable, just sort of an understanding education and teaching methods and things that I wasn't previously really too well versed in. In addition, in terms of time abroad, when I was an undergraduate, I studied abroad in Spain twice, once for a month in the summer and another time for a full semester. Also, just in terms of significant things after graduation, I lived in Argentina for a bit, working at some schools there. And then finally, I listed on here, similar actually to Joy, kind of some crossover here, of work I've done in refugee resettlement as a intern when I was an undergraduate, and then also ended up being a site for some qualitative research I did for my senior thesis in sociology, looking at refugee client integration into the community in Dayton, Ohio. And so that was really great, like undergrad sort of early research, data collection experience. And then I continue to work as a volunteer in the employment services pre-pandemic with clients. So it's not international education, but it's really just like a fun outlet and meaningful thing to me that kind of gives you that global international touch within your community. So yeah, so that's kind of just the quick introduction of myself. And I guess I'll throw it back to Brian for kind of talking about skills and abilities.
That sounds great. Thank you, Erin. So one thing I failed to mention at the top was I'm in East Lansing, Michigan currently. And so I work at Michigan State University as an assistant director of student affairs and international engagement coordinator. So Courtney, when you had mentioned your job title, I thought, well, they can get long. And so I've been in this position, this current position just since August. So whatever that makes it, 6 months or whatever. I'm not a math person, but since August. But I've been at Michigan State University for a very long time. So I started my previous job as an academic advisor in the Department of Political Science in 2006, and finished my master's just probably a few months prior to that. So much of my time actually has been spent at Michigan State, which is one of the reasons why I chose this particular program, that is to mix things up a bit. And the online program was very attractive to me because it can allow a lot more that we realize now for obvious reasons, but the flexibility, generally speaking. And to take a bit of a step back in terms of giving you an overview of my study abroad experience, because during Dr. Witt's talk earlier this afternoon, she had talked about different program types, different types of study abroad programs, that is. So I wanted to touch on that. During my freshman year at Michigan State, I kind of made my own program. I studied abroad in Ecuador for a summer, so 3 months or whatever at USFQ. And so I was really the only student there studying Spanish immersion, Spanish language immersion. So that's really, I think, where I got my first taste of study abroad. And as those of you who have participated in study abroad and who work in it, there's something in the water, if you will, right? Because you do it once and you want more. And so this was a lifetime ago, but it wasn't long after that I jumped back in the pool, if you will. And so I got involved in spring break programs where it's heavily involved in service learning. And so during spring breaks, rather than doing your typical, however you define spring break as college kids, I spent my time doing service learning in Mexico predominantly, and senior year in Puerto Rico. So that was a reoccurring thing for me. I also spent a summer in the Caribbean studying Caribbean politics, and a semester in Merida, Mexico. So again, just different types of programming and different models. I would have to say my favorite, honestly, is the service learning, because that's what really helped me realize the connection between what you're learning, the hands-on things that you're learning, and applying what you're learning in class to the real world. So helping people, for one, right? Just, it's the human experience, the human connection, a lot of that we're missing now because of online and remote stuff, but just helping people in general. learning Spanish, right? So it's much easier to learn a foreign language when you're actually using it and practicing and having to do it day in and day out. I think we all realize that. So that's really what led me to where I am today, just really loving the culture, language, things of that nature. One of the other reoccurring things that I heard during our introductions, which isn't surprising, but I think worth mentioning. So I too taught ESL for 2 years. After completing my BA, I moved back to Mexico, Merida in the Yucatan, the south region of Mexico. That's where I did a lot of my service learning study abroad programs, spent a semester, wanted to keep going back, wanted more of the culture, more of the language. So I just kind of up and left. And as I said, I was an ESL instructor for 2 years. Knew I wanted to go back to school. And so that's when I started my master's. So that kind of connects the dots, right? So skills, there's lots of them. Intercultural competence, foreign language, right? Navigating different cultures, different people, you name it. I'm going to cut myself off there because I'll just keep talking and we have other people that you want to hear from. So, so I'm forgetting who, Courtney? No, Joy, I think you followed.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. Brian, yeah, Brian said a lot of the really great big picture stuff, and maybe I'll talk a little bit more about some of the nitty gritty skills that I didn't anticipate needing, that are maybe not as glamorous in the sense of doesn't necessarily, policy and procedure writing doesn't necessarily doesn't drag me out of bed in the morning, doesn't make me jump up, but it's really necessary. Some of the roles that I've had, both at Illinois and at CUNY. And I think so one of the skills I think and abilities that I've sort of identified in my own trajectory, and I think it really depends on maybe what goals you might have organizationally, what your institution or organization is like. But I've tended to work in very large bureaucratic institutions that have layers of, I think, oversight, concerns, liability concerns and so forth, if you're talking about outbound student mobility. And I think that this is a really critical thing that I learned pretty early on in my career, where I was, representing international education, mostly outbound study abroad, education abroad service, research, on councils like the Risk Management Council, and speaking with university auditors and legal counsel, purchasing, contract services. So I think that if folks want to be in higher education, I guess I would, and you might all know this already if you work in the field of higher ed at colleges and universities, that there are different things that different offices care about. And it's really important, I think, to Allison, sorry. This is all should try to help, right, with success, and knowing what the why. I think that Brian really taught about or touched on that. So I think so well. If we sort of can be very passionate about the learning outcomes that we may have experienced ourselves and what we really envision for our students, that will drive sort of the nitty-gritty work that you basically need to advocate for and help folks understand the big picture, because often they get sucked into what their worlds are myopically. And it's really, I think, helpful for everyone to realize, yes, we send, individuals into the world as they're developing skills to really, help our societies and our planet flourish in the future. And it's so critical that they have these opportunities, help us get there, help us with really our synthetically made policies in some ways. They are important, but how do we get to the yes and the pathway to enable these things to happen? So I guess the skills I've learned are comfort with ambiguity and with pushback, and being able to identify what those questions or doubts might be, and to be able to cogently sort of address those and in advance if possible. Patience, I think, is another one. Meeting facilitation skills, especially if you're trying to gather disparate individuals to common solutions. Note taking, I mean, these are really basic, but I think it's important. Project management skills. So I think that those are some of the things that are pretty critical for what I've experienced in my career so far. Someone make it fun now.
Ooh, I was going to talk about risk management stuff. So, so I'll start with the kind of also nitty gritty a little bit, that you need to make sure that you're able to stay calm in chaos. So especially in this last year with COVID, many of us had to return students home in the middle of the night for an entire week from abroad. I've had calls in the middle of the nights of students that are in the hospital, or I've had a student expelled. So you just have to be, in the field, you need to be able to kind of work on your toes, and then also be able to stay cool, calm, and collected, and really kind of work things out as they come. I've really learned that in the past 2 years. On maybe a more fun note, so I can kind of pep this up a little bit, I would say that, yes, adaptability, Brian, for sure. I would say flexibility and creativity are two huge parts of my job. So I can go and do a classroom presentation and say, okay, study abroad. Yeah, you study abroad, great. But what can I do to better the office? So it's not just sending students abroad. It's how can we ensure that they have the best preparation possible? How can we ensure when they come back, they have the best return, and, that we can help them with the culture shock? How can we internationalize the campus? How can we, in a time of COVID, what do we do when students can't go abroad? So we created virtual tours. So you have to constantly be thinking about, okay, if this can't happen, what about this? Or, sure, we have this many students going abroad, but what can we do to make it better? Because I think the field is evolving and kind of changing. And I think COVID's going to completely change the field too. And so those would be kind of my two really big ones that come in with a mindset in whatever job you're going into in international ed of, what can I do that's unique and different? And I think that'll bring you pretty far in the field too, because a lot of different presentations you can give and talking to people in the field, if you have these really unique ideas that you bring to the table, it'll kind of set you apart.
Okay. So yes, on this question of skills and abilities, a couple of things I was reflecting on as someone who works a lot with university faculty was first the idea of diplomacy. So if any of you work in higher ed, I sometimes think the faculty world and the staff world there's overlap, but it's often a very different just work style and expectations and just dispositions sometimes. So learning to be diplomatic and trying to sort of sometimes toggle between kind of bureaucracy and procedures and procurement and all these sort of like kind of nitty gritty things of the institution, and then also sort of to be allies with the faculty and understand their sort of perspectives on their academic vision and what's going to work well on site. That can be, it's a sort of an art, I would say, to sort of sharpen. And so that was a skill and ability I've definitely learned over the last 5 years that can be really important as you're trying to build rapport with the faculty and also, follow the procedural kind of logistical things you have to, both for the university, in this case, University of Dayton for me, but also sometimes when I'm working with third-party providers. So if anyone's familiar with like CAPA or AIFS or CIEE or CEA, that is definitely another constituency that requires some diplomatic sort of negotiations at times to sort of advocate for our faculty and what their vision is for a program, but to also sort of I sort of hold the line, I guess, with faculty vision and try to like, keep things in order with what like our contracts say or what proposals have already included. So that skill of diplomacy, I think, is really important. In addition, attention to detail, again, sounds kind of basic, but it's super important. In my role, I do a lot with logistics. So looking at program rosters and who has their passport information entered into our system and who is going where on what flight. So just attention to detail can't be hammered home enough. Also, a skill and ability that or an experience, really, I should say, that's been really helpful is I've had the opportunity to co-lead two programs, not through my office, but through our campus ministry office, specifically our Center for Social Concern, which are not for-credit programs, but are cross-cultural experiences nonetheless. And having the experience of doing that, I feel like has given me a lot of insight into what it's like to be kind of on the other side as a faculty staff co-leader, that I feel like gives I guess a little credibility sometimes to my work with faculty who are going on programs, and it also just gives me insight into like, oh yeah, that sounds good in theory, but on site X process does not work, or that's not effective, or something like that. So I would say that experience co-leading, if you ever get an opportunity, can be really helpful in addition to it being fun, but it gives you just a lot of great, I think, just sort of perspective from what the faculty leaders are experiencing if you're working on faculty-led programs. So I think I'll shoot it back over to Brian for our third topic here, which is advice for those who want to work in international education.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, so one or two things that I wanted to touch on with regard to advice and sharing just from my own experiences. In my former position as an academic advisor, I would often get the question, why academic advising versus study abroad, for example, right? So people would see and people would know that I'm passionate about a lot of things, two of which would be advising and international education or study abroad in particular. And so from my perspective, I always saw it as an opportunity to do a lot of different things, right? Being really involved in many different facets of university administration. And so students would often come to me or to advisors and want to study abroad, right? So that would be great. I'd be super happy to do that and talk the student's ear off with a disclaimer about, okay, you wanted to talk about this, so yes, we'll talk about it for a while. But it gave me not only the opportunity to be involved in that part of the student's undergraduate experience, but also to connect with other people and later colleagues around campus. In other words, as people began to know me and work with me, opportunities followed. And so, for instance, in my department, we had a study abroad program to the UK. And so I would often work on that program with our faculty, with logistics and all of that. And then eventually that grew to me going on the program, which was great. And so that was one perk. And then continuing to work with folks around campus, I began to work with other programs. And these were just add-ons, right? So again, perks. And so the point is, find something you're passionate about and opportunities tend to follow. And so if you aren't directly working in international education or something that's related to that, connect with people. And I think opportunities will follow. I worked on what MSU, Michigan State University, has first year seminar abroad programs. So these are basically pre-college programs where incoming freshmen participate in about a 2-week program abroad. And so I had a really unique opportunity to go to Cuba twice and Costa Rica as well. So this was, I don't know, a couple of years ago. Time is strange. So the other thing, unrelated, because I don't want to take up a bunch of time, but to give a bit of an overview. so folks can decide what breakout rooms they want to go in. But my other piece of advice would be have a hobby, right? So find something else that you're also really passionate about that's outside of work, right? To have balance. For me, I'm an avid runner and triathlete, and so I would not be able to balance all of the things in life, especially now. So not only am I laughing about now, like, so, being in a doctoral program and working and things like that, I'm laughing mostly about, our current situation. And so that's stressful for all of us for lots of different reasons. And so having an outlet is really important, as well as having have the ability to connect with other people. So I'm purposely going off on a bit of a tangent. And so by that, I mean, in your program, have faculty, have colleagues that you can connect with, especially in an online environment. So from here, I'll kick it back to Joy, because I'm cutting myself off so I don't take up a bunch of time.
Yeah, Brian, you said a lot of really great things too. I don't know if I have a ton to add. I know there was a comment there or a bullet about professional organizations to get involved in. And I think that's, I serve on the Forum on Education Abroad Council, and that's been, and different working groups there. And I found it, it's more work on one hand, but I found it very helpful to sort of freshen your perspective outside of maybe the organization or university college that you're working in. So I guess I would recommend opportunities to serve the field in a broader way, if you can do that. And for those of you, I guess, who are in leadership positions or aspire to be, I think that one thing that I've been thinking about with my team is to really step back and to let folks identify, I think, Brian, what you were saying, like things that they're interested in or what people are passionate about. And I think that finding your voice is really important. And I think people can probably do that in different ways, but just depending on where you are. And I know for me, what I'm trying to do is just step away in order for others to kind of fill in and to sort of expand and kind of play with ideas and curiosity. Brian, I think you kind of talked about that too, in terms of find something you're interested in. I think just to stay curious, because work can get really can get to be a slog. I think this past year has been really hard, I think, for a lot of us. And I'll second the self-care business with just making sure that you're sort of, I think, owning your time and choosing how you want to spend it rather than always reacting. So I think my advice would be to, I think, stay curious and talk to other people outside of the people you normally talk to, if at all possible, because that just, I think, gives you inspiration and maybe different perspectives and ideas for whatever task you have at hand. I think that's it.
So Joy and Brian said basically everything you need to know, but I'll throw in a few other things that I thought of. This might be common sense, but you truly need to know how to articulate your own international experience if you want to work in this field. It's very, very important that you can go beyond, I studied abroad and that's why I love it. Like, you need to know why you're passionate about this field and why what we do is more than just travel and more than just people getting to see the Eiffel Tower. I've found that to be so beneficial that I have an elevator pitch and I have a way to kind of talk about my experiences in a way that fits the field. Exactly, Brian, more than it was fun. And I think my advice too would be to learn the lingo of the field. There's not a ton, but there are tons of acronyms and there are tons of, phrases like an island program or things like that. If you can kind of learn the lingo when you're talking to people in the international education field, you're going to seem like you fit even if you feel like you don't. So try and learn the lingo. I also think that it's important to be a scholar practitioner. So as much as we are staff in many instances, we do work closely with faculty. And I did mention earlier that as a staff member, sometimes you're seen as kind of like the poor stepchild, but the more that you can relate to faculty in terms of things that you possibly research or things that you're interested in or courses you've taken, the more respect you get from faculty. And I think that goes a long way in your career in international ed. And then the last thing I would mention is when you're thinking about a career in international ed, think about what you want from it in terms of, do you want to wear many hats? So I work at a university where I'm the only person in the study abroad office. So I wear every single hat imaginable. So I do risk management, I do financial aid, I do everything for study abroad. So that's great in the sense that I have a varied job, but it's very hard because I'm managing everything and I don't have a team to work with. Or would you rather be in a setting where you're with a great team, but you're more specialized? So you're really, you're faculty-led programs, or you're working on the education programs, or you're working with short-term programs. So kind of think of that. And then also remember, all of us here today are talking about jobs at universities, but there's a whole nother side of international ed. So you can work for a provider program, or you can work for different companies in DC or businesses in DC that have international education opportunities. So when you're thinking about jobs, kind of think about those things too, because I think that it's really important to know what you're getting into and to have a good sense of what you personally work well with the circumstances.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up right on what Courtney was just saying. I'm probably the exact opposite in terms of working kind of conditions or organizational structure. We have 5 people in our office who do programming, and it was 6 pre-pandemic, plus 3 student workers, which is actually lower than we would normally have. We would usually have 5 or 6. So it's a pretty big operation, and so I am able to be like pretty specialized in what I do, and like, here are the duties, this is what you do. And we have some crossover that, things that are, for the whole team, but I'm not, concerned with doing other like risk management things or other responsibilities, like you said. So I feel like that's a really great point. Something else you mentioned about lingo of the field. One thing I found really helpful is the Forum on Education Abroad, which for those of you who don't know is sort of the, I guess you could say, premier institution, professional organization for people in education abroad specifically. They have a page that I found a couple of years ago that lays out different job descriptions, like different job types. So like you'll see an assistant, and then there's an assistant, a coordinator, a senior coordinator, a manager, an assistant director, and it like basically outlines kind of the basic job functions that they kind of recommend that a position title should be in terms of being matched with certain characteristics and duties, et cetera. And I found that really helpful as I just think about, okay, what's the next step and what do these titles mean and what could I expect in a future position? So just going off Courtney's point there of the jargon, the forum was really helpful just looking at those job descriptions for me. And then the 2 things I wanted to say when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about folks who might be putting in applications now and kind of just thinking what's really kind of I guess popular or common right now in the field. And I would say demonstrating a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in this moment, I think is particularly helpful. And if you can do that and demonstrate your commitment to those values, I think that's going to take you a long way as you're putting in applications for a whole variety of reasons. And then second, a little maybe less sort of popular or well-known, I guess, from DEI would be having an understanding about ethical community engaged learning. At the University of Dayton, we are soon to be a partner in a group called the Collaborative. I was going to bring up the full name. The Community-Based Global Learning Collaborative. It's out of Haverford College in Philadelphia. And it's basically looking at fair trade learning principles and looking at what does it mean to enter communities and what does it mean to engage ethically with those communities once you're there. Thinking about sustainable practices, things of that nature. And a really cool group. It feels very kind of cutting edge, and it's really a pleasure to be a part of it. Our university, like I said, is just kind of getting on board. So that's just something else to be mindful of, in addition to diversity, equity, and inclusion issues that I thought might be helpful to mention to people who are looking to get into the field who may want to demonstrate that they're kind of up on some of the cutting edge concepts that the field is sort of wrangling with. So yeah, so that is it. I'll pass it back to Brian at the top about opportunities at Illinois.
All right, thank you. So this topic, I guess, a little bit less prepared or versed on with regard to online. I guess I would go back to say that there's lots, right? There's lots of opportunities depending on what you want to do. We put some, if you haven't seen it, we put some links in the chat with regard to organizations. So in terms of looking for jobs, you can go to some of those that are in the chat. I put NASFA in there, very well-known organization, not only for study abroad, but also international education, more broadly speaking. So in other words, my wife works at MSU in the Office for International Students and Scholars. And so they use that organization a lot. So very popular on that kind of that side of international as well. So I think many of you are probably in online programs with regard to education. I'm, as I said at the beginning, I'm in the online EPOL program. So I think it's a great opportunity to take advantage of, right? And so we started, I would say this is just for laughs, but we started doing this before it was cool. But I don't want to go off topic too much. Dr. Witt, was there something about online programs that you wanted us to really hone in on?
Not necessarily. It's more, yeah, just if you have any suggestions, like courses you've taken, or okay. I don't know, whatever.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you have anything that you think students should know, maybe courses not to take. I don't know.
Let's do the breakout.
Dr. Witt's course, no matter what.
Stay after for that.
Yeah. We'll put your breakout room so you can speak freely, but.
No, but thank you for getting us back on course. So with regard to coursework, my genuine advice would be to take a class in all honesty with your advisor and do that early. I think I would be, again, very, very honest. This is being recorded, so there you go. But I stand by that in all seriousness. Connect with your advisor, take classes with them, get involved. The earlier the better, because I would be lost. I would honestly be lost, one, without that in an online program. It's hard enough with a pandemic and not being able to make really the in-person connections. And so, for example, we presented at the Global Symposium in October. I think I have that right. And that should have been in person, right? So those of you who are aware, it was supposed to be in person. I don't want to go back really to mention too much about 2020. But my point is, many of us here really should have and would have presented, gotten together in person, all of that. I would have met Emily in person and many of you. So that's sad that we couldn't, but we are all here virtually. So many of us probably could not be here virtually otherwise, right? So there are definitely pros and cons. And so, yes, connect with your faculty, connect with your peers. I think that's especially important in an online program, because for me, I would honestly be lost without not only having peers, but also without having connected to a faculty member to keep me honest and on camera. Some of those things happen mutually. So So I think that's all I had on that topic. So from here, I'll hand it back to Joy.
Have trouble unmuting myself. Yeah, so I'm actually, on campus. So I live in Urbana, so I was actually just on campus today. And so I don't know if I'm the best person to speak to this, but I feel like because things have so much of, actually all of my classes have been online, even though I think technically in the on-campus program. I agree with what Ryan said about connecting with your advisor in a course setting. For me, that was really a game changer too with my advisor, who's an HRD. And I don't know if folks are, I don't know exactly how online students are treated in terms of listservs that you get, but I found that the Illinois Global Institute, which is sort of a group of area study centers, they put on a lot of really great events. I mean, in this year, they've all been online in terms of lectures or discussions around regional specific areas or global issues. Okay, thanks, Allison. And I guess I would recommend folks to connect with some of those things happening too. And some of these things are not even necessarily international related, but the Bruce Nesbitt African American Cultural Center had a poetry reading by this wonderful poet Nikki Giovanni. I don't know if you know her, but I've been reading her poetry actually for a while, and I was surprised that they were able to book her as, to read poetry and to kind of answer questions. And she's a bit of an icon, I think. So there are lots of really great opportunities, and I think really this is such an opportune time for people who are considering the program or who are in the program to take advantage of what I think is probably going to be a sustained set of opportunities online that are really quite remarkable in terms of the network that the university offers. The library, I think, needs a shout out as well. We just have such a great library, and I've found everything I could possibly ever want. So library.illinois.edu, there's an online chat function too. It's fantastic. So I think those are the things that I'll suggest.
I'll just chime in 3 courses that I took that I felt like I had the chance to really explore topics of interest within study abroad or international education: globalizing educational policy, global issues in learning, and education and globalization. So I feel like all 3 of those courses that I took allowed me to not only work towards my degree, but also help me study things that are really applicable to my job. So I would suggest any of those.
All right. And in terms of things I was thinking about, I think Brian was kind of hitting on this when he was speaking, but anytime there's on-campus conferences, I feel like those are really great opportunities if you can make it to go, which was a great idea before the pandemic. But actually, right last year when they had the grad conference for the College of Ed, right before everything hit, I think it was like maybe Friday, March 5th or something. So the last in-person gathering that I had, at least for a while. And it was a really great experience to just come to the campus or go to the campus, and then also to just see what research presentations looked like at the doctoral level. That was a new experience for me, just to kind of see like, what language did they use? Like what is this positionality thing that they keep talking about? And so things like that. I also went to a presentation by somebody who had this really great sort of typology about critical citizenship education, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best. And I got the slide from the presenter, and it was really impactful for my own thinking about my own research. And so it was a great investment. So I recommend when those conferences can happen again, that you should go. And then so a suggestion I guess I have is to take potentially non-global studies courses if you can. I, of course, love the global studies electives, and those are great too, but I took 2 classes this summer, one that was HRD around learning technologies, and then another one with Dr. Pak, her social and historical barriers to education. And as someone who has never formally studied education, I mentioned before, like sociology and Spanish and international relations, those 2 courses, just getting that history of, in this case, barriers to education, and then also kind of looking at learning modalities with learning technologies, that was really helpful for me to sort of have a well-rounded sense of education as a discipline and not just the global studies piece. So I encourage you, if you have some wiggle room on your electives, to maybe look into another concentration and just kind of, experiment, check it out. And then I put just future hopes here, which is a sort of, they're ambiguous because 2 things I want to suggest are things I haven't actually done yet, but I want to. And one of them being the education abroad opportunities that exist for graduate students in the college. I would love to do one of those experiences. And I think it's a great opportunity that I don't think graduate students many times have education abroad opportunities in the same way undergraduates do, with the way models at universities are set up. So that's one thing. And then in terms of a course, I am right now in Dr. Verbulis' Role of Theory in Education course. It's right after this, actually. So, and it just started, but it's so far really great. And it's really helping me sort of demystify this idea of theory in the research process, and looking at theoretical frameworks and things that sound scary, but they don't have to be scary if you just sort of lean in. And so that's a class I'm in right now that I would recommend. Yeah. So that's all I have. And I think it was just our final point was sort of miscellaneous advice. So I'll send it back to Brian for the final round here.
Miscellaneous advice.
Oh, I think
That sounds like a loaded question.
Or else I made up that category. I don't know.
No.
Or perhaps we could lend it to Q&A, because I think miscellaneous advice comes from question and answer sessions.
I like it.
So I will stop sharing if that's okay, and we just kind of do the Q&A or breakout rooms.
Yeah, let's do Q&A for a minute or two while I figure out how to make the breakout rooms. Does anyone have any questions they want to go ahead and speak up or post in the chat?
Yes, don't be shy.
Agreed.
I have a question. Hi, my name is Matt. I'm a master's student with global studies, and I'm currently a high school teacher, and I teach French, and I'm looking to kind of transition into study abroad, international education, something in that realm. So I guess what would be your advice from pivoting to a career like being a teacher, being in education, to kind of pivoting into something like study abroad, international education, things like that?
So Matthew, this summer is probably not the best for it. However, you should look. CIEE has programs where you can teach internationally as a high school teacher. And I think that would be, if you want to do that until you kind of find that transition, that would give you your foot in the door to say you have experience leading international programs, but you're still teaching. And then that way, once you kind of have that experience, you can really kind of say, I understand what a study abroad program is from the other side and as someone leading it. And I found the value in that. And so then I want to move into the field, XYZ ways. But that would be a suggestion that I have.
I agree completely. I'll add real quick. I mean, maybe you can take advantage, Matthew, of some programs offered through the university once they start going. I think that you've gone before, but you can always go again. And so I think maybe linking up with a faculty member, doing or doing a research project along with your master's work. And those 2 things, right? So what I'm suggesting as well as what Courtney said, I don't think they're mutually exclusive either.
Thank you.
I would add too, the idea that you're already in sort of a curricular space, I think could be really helpful as you sort of say in an interview process or whatnot, sort of demonstrate that the focus is on the learning and the learning outcomes, and that you have this very firm understanding that it is about global learning and intercultural learning, not travel with a syllabus, or sort of this is about globetrotting and getting cool Instagram photos. So I feel like being able to demonstrate that, maybe I don't have the experience in the field yet, but I do come with this educator's mind, and sort of this focus on the learning process, not necessarily the, sort of just the travel aspect of it, which is wonderful too. But I think that could be really helpful, sort of different sort of profile to bring to the application process.
Great, thank you.
Nah, I have something else for you. I feel like we're all.
No, I'll take it all.
I've served on several search committees and other people who have maybe a similar profile or background too. I actually think that the K-16 pipeline is something that we should probably think about a little bit more intentionally, and I think that you could probably play that up somehow in your materials, because you understand, or you have this experience of, I don't know what you said, high school, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really critical. Like what we're trying to do, I think, at least with our office, is really broaden who can imagine themselves in education abroad. And I think oftentimes students will opt themselves out because they've maybe fulfilled the foreign language requirement and say, okay, I'm done studying this language. So I think that you have, something unique that you could actually bring to education abroad offices in terms of that perspective. And maybe in the meantime, you plant the seeds for education abroad in the future and really talk about that. I think also parents, you have experience with parents, I assume, and yes. they're a critical, important entity every semester within the first week or two. Or three. I know I'm going to be dealing with parents' concerns, when their children really, leave that, hundreds, thousands of miles away. But I think if you can anticipate some parent concerns as well, and bring those skills, it really depends on the job description, but I feel like you actually have some things that are value adds, I think, to most education abroad offices. I'm assuming you do.
Yeah, and I have had a little time to experience some leading high school, and I actually led middle school students through those provider companies that I went through my school. So I guess that could count as experience as well, in terms of leading programs like that too. So yeah, thank you.
I think if it's okay with you guys, let's just stay in one room, because that way you can get advice from everybody. If you guys have other questions, if that's all right. So you don't have to, move yourself around. Let's just stay put. So what other questions? Who else is kind of thinking about maybe moving or maybe pursuing this, or what? Go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just joking that moving.
I thought you were going to say something.
No, just to break the ice, a couple of you will appreciate this. So one thing that I didn't mention for whatever reason, so I think part of my own inherent interest in study abroad stems from the fact that my mother is actually from Canada, so I have literally international blood. And so that's part of my curiosity, right, with regard to why students choose programs. So what does the selection process look like, right? And what does the end product look like? So if somebody wants to study abroad to have fun, right? How does that play out on the program itself? That's a rhetorical question. Those of us who have been on, we know what that looks like. But I mentioned what I said at the top because I have said to Dr. Wood and others on a number of times that I'm just leaving and going to Canada when the border opens.
I made him promise to take
it.
So don't worry, guys, I've got us our transportation. He's promised to smuggle us out, so.
I have to. That was just, like I said, to kind of break the ice. So what other questions do folks have?
I was gonna ask if there was anyone in here who works with international students. I think the panelists all work in education abroad. And I was just curious if anyone else works international students, international student services?
Sorry, I was looking at the chat. I do like East Lansing, so I'll start with that. I've been here for a long time. But, you know, also most of that, the last year plus has been in my house. So yes, like many of you have the itch to literally go anywhere else. But Mary Beth, to answer your question, yes. So part of my new job does and will include working with international students in our college. I don't know if I mentioned the college that I work for at MSU is the College of Social Science. And so that part of my job title, International Engagement Coordinator, right, has been lacking. One, because it's me, no, I'm joking, but mostly because it's new. So it's an interesting time to start a new job, needless to say, but also we don't have a lot of international students on campus. My wife does work for the Office of International Students and Scholars at MSU. And so that makes a great partnership for many reasons. But yes, I mean, what part of that can I help with? I'm just trying to sort of get at the heart of the question to be a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I didn't specifically have a specific question. I just kind of wanted to hear from other people who maybe were in the program or were interested in the program. I work in an ISS office and have had to go through a career, or I will be going through a career change, I guess. Like I have my job now, thankfully, because of COVID. We've been, you know, remote. I had to move across the country for my husband's job. And so at some point, my remote work will transition to me needing to find another position. And so this is a program that I've been looking at for quite some time. And I think now is the time that it will fit very nicely within my schedule and career goals. But yeah, I would love to just hear from anyone who works with international students. That's kind of my, you know, passion area. And it's obviously, we're also going through a lot of changes this year, same with education abroad. So
it looks like Matthew mentioned in the chat that he's the director at his university. So if you don't mind, maybe you can talk a little bit about your job.
Yeah, I'm not in the program. I'm here looking at the program as well, but I oversee both study abroad and ISSO at Cal Poly Pomona in Southern California. And so like when you mentioned that, I would be happy to address questions. I can certainly share my email there, but is there anything additional that you were specifically asking about regarding ISSO work? It sounds like you already have some experience though.
Yeah, I do international student programs. And so looking into doing more like DSO type of.
Okay, so you're not currently a DSO?
I'm not currently a DSO.
Okay, yeah. It's not an easy time, I think, to be breaking into the into the field. I think on either side of the house. But I do have a sense, at least on the West Coast, that you know the hiring season is coming, and there are a lot of universities that are, you know, sort of doubling down on international education as a whole, on both study abroad and COIL is another issue, but also for DSOs. I would just make sure if you haven't already had training, I would recommend doing, you know, one of the NAFSA courses on F1 advising or J1 advising. Mm-hmm. If you haven't already done that, and you know, if you can get your employer to pay for it, it's great. But if you can't, and you have the means, not everybody has the means to do it, but to go ahead and make that investment, that's probably the number one thing. And actually, some of the things that Courtney mentioned earlier regarding education abroad and breaking into the field, I think the same things apply. Knowing why you want to be a DSO, and taking your experiences that you've had, that, you know, whether soft skills or technical skills that you've gained, and that you really, you know, play those up and know how to do. I'm not a big fan of the term elevator pitch. It sounds so businessy, but you know, we get what we're talking about when we say that. You've got to be able to communicate within I don't know, 20 seconds, you know, maybe we'll give you like a 20-story building right in that elevator to be able to articulate why you want to be involved. But I can put my email in, and if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to help out.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and just to say to both of you, you know, don't get the sense that, you know, it's only study abroad in the program. We could do another panel of people just working in in international student services. And you know, sort of in my office, you know, each college sort of does it its own way at Illinois, but in my office, we sort of, you know, I'm sort of supposed to be half and half. You know, that depends on the day, of course, as you know, but we take care of international students. We're supporting international students, and then also, but we don't do the actual admissions piece. You know, that's all happening at the campus level. So, but there are plenty of people in the program that do work in that space that I think could serve as great sort of, you know, springboard for you to find something. What part of the country are you going to be in?
So I work at the University of Oklahoma. I'm the assistant director of international student programs, and then we moved to Minneapolis. So it's just like a whole new world. Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we can connect you with some colleagues there too. So that would be, you know, I think there's a lot of room there to do all sorts of things, you know.
Absolutely.
You'll find plenty to do and plenty of opportunities. Exciting place to be.
Yes, thank you so much.
Mary Beth, what is the advising model where you're at? In other words, do folks focus on a certain visa type, right? So in other words, our job duties outlined by F1 or J or H?
Yeah, so in our office, we just do student advising. Our scholar advising is done through a separate office that's kind of out of HR. And so we're just doing international student advising. Like I said, I do programming, so we're working with the same students. We're just doing something totally different. But our advisors are broken down by like colleges. So all of our advisors do it by the college cohort, but we also have a sponsored student advisor. So she advises all of our sponsored students who are here. And then we also have an exchange student coordinator and our incoming student advisor. So that's kind of how our office has it broken down. There's 10 of us.
Okay.
10 or 11 of us. Yeah.
Yeah, at MSU, it's more centralized. So there's one office, and within that office, people are specialized at least on one visa type, if not more than one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it depends on where you're at. And it might also depend where your interest lies.
Sure. Yeah.
What's your dream job, Mary Beth? Like, what do you want to do? Like,
oh, well, my dream. Okay.
What is it?
Actually, my dream job, I'm doing my dream job right now. And so that's why it was kind of sad that to have to move. But that's why I'm wanting to get DSO experience, because so much of like the leadership opportunities in international education really do require that DSO experience. And there's like from honestly like a logistical perspective, that is where like job security lies. So I'm thinking from a job security perspective, but also thinking like long-term in my career. And I don't mean to monopolize this entire conversation, so like people can pop in and like but so I'm thinking like for me, what I'm passionate about is being in these high-level conversations where decisions are being made about policies that affect international students, and that they can be receiving equitable treatment and policies that affect them.
So being an advocate
yes,
role.
100%. And so thankfully at OU where I am, this position like was kind of created with that in mind. And I've been super grateful to be able to do that in this position. But I know that to be able to move to a different institution, that DSO work is super important.
Sure.
And
that's wise.
yeah.
That's smart.
So that's kind of my.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, I think it makes sense to do the DSO thing, but I think, just really keep as much of an open mind as you can, because I think in that community, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff on. And, you might find something that, because that advocacy role is really needed in lots of spaces, not just in higher ed. So
Absolutely.
I would just say, I think you'll find something really awesome, because there's a great need for that skill and for that that passion, so.
Mary Beth, if you ever have to move to Kentucky, our university is in dire need of someone that's passionate like you with international education and international student services. So tell your husband Lexington, Kentucky is the next move.
Okay.
Yes, or Illinois, we're here too. So there's a lot of options out there.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Which direction did you say you were moving?
So we came from Oklahoma and we moved to Minneapolis in September. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they have some universities and colleges in Minnesota, I hear.
There's
Yeah.
a lot.
I think you'll find some.
And there's been 0 openings in international
It's
student
an
services.
unusual moment. Like that's
I
gonna
know.
change. That's gonna change. This
Yeah.
is, you can't judge anything by what's happened in the past year. Like this, this is not typical. There'll be a lot of openings and a lot going on that will be really exciting. And I think it was Courtney was saying, 2022, and that's what I keep telling everybody. I tell my students and everybody else, we just have to make it to 2022, and we can. We're gonna do it, guys. We're gonna, and it's gonna be, let the good times roll, right? Like it's gonna be crazy, because we've all been stuck at home. We've all had these really great ideas, and all of that creativity is just going to be unleashed, and so it's gonna be awesome.
Inbound and outbound, right? So a lot of us are going to want to travel internationally.
Exactly.
So folks are going to want to come to the United States, hopefully, as well. And so I think there's a lot of work that can be done there with regard to international students, because I feel like, there's a lot of good work that's done for study abroad and helping American students try to understand, try to unpack their experiences and what they've learned. But is there more that can be done for international students on U.S. campuses? I'm hoping to develop a course in the fall that touches and focuses a little bit on this. So also, if anybody has advice on that for later, but
just going to add into sort of as a final piece of advice, since a couple, or at least one person, maybe a couple, said they were prospective students. Just if you ever want to do kind of like an informational interview, I'm happy to do that. I can put my email in the chat, I guess, or just Google me. UD has my name online. But so if you ever want to just like talk about the program or anything else, but in terms of doing an online program, I've had a really great experience so far, and I was leery because I'm a people person and I like to be in person. That's why I mentioned before that I loved going to campus the one pre-pandemic time that I could, or actually I've been twice, but one was for the conference. Sharon Lee is the name of the individual who is the program manager for EDD students. And like, I was thinking before this, meeting today, I was like, if I could be the president of the Sharon Lee fan club, like I would just love it. She's so awesome. She's so great. She's like your logistical just queen of all things forms and advice and curriculum. Like she is just such a support, like in all those kind of logistical ways. So my kind of philosophy with the program is, like, it's a little cliche, but I think applies to so many things in life. What you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So you can sit and not have your camera on in all your classes, never speak up, never know anybody. And I imagine you could be successful too, but like if you engage with people and make connections and really take initiative, I think you will just get that much more. You just reap what you sow in that sense. And I will say as well that I think that there is a high degree of discipline you need and self-direction to do a program like this. It is kind of a lonely journey at times. And I think that can be the case whether you're online or in person when it comes to doing your research and really getting into databases. Like databases don't talk back to you. Like it's kind of lonely. So I think like being able to stay self-directed and disciplined is great, but then also like taking opportunities to engage with people when you can is really important. So I just wanted to say a couple of those things real quick, just about, you know, the online nature of the program. And just if there were prospective students, I'd be happy to like talk to you. I think Dr. Witt or Dr. Davila have even like forwarded people on to me at times, and hopefully I didn't scare them away. But yeah.
Another thing about online that I think is really great about this program is that there are students from all over the world in the program. So I've had classes with students that are in Dubai or that are in Thailand or that are teaching English in China and from all over the US too. And so I think that that has been really beneficial for me, because when we're talking about education systems around the world, they can chime in and say, well, I'm a teacher in the United Arab Emirates and this is what it's really like, or things of that nature. So I think that's something really, really beneficial of this program, and something beneficial about the online program, because I think it diversifies the students that are in it.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, that was something that has made it super fun to be involved in this program, because, you know, when we were designing it, I didn't think about that. I didn't realize how awesome that would be to, you know, we're talking about something that's happening. I mean, just the pandemic, for example, and then you go to class and you have people who are everywhere, right? Who come into the class together and they're still in their place. Like if you were to do the program, you know, on campus, then some of that would be lost, right? Because we would all have to leave what we're doing and come to campus. But in the online space, everyone stays in their context. So everybody's still doing their day job, right? And then they come together in class, and that's been so cool. And I did not ever think of that in all the time it took to design the program. It never crossed my mind how awesome that would be and what an advantage that would be until it started happening. And, you know, it sounds so obvious, obviously, you know, of course, people are going to be joining from all over the world. But when you're studying international education, when you're studying global studies, and you have people joining from all over the world, that's amazing. You know, I just didn't think about how cool it would be until it happened. So yeah, so that's, you know, that's kind of just the faculty side of it. It's super amazing to have that you know, constant resource of students who are actually there living it and can tell us what it's really like, and can share you know, the real lived experience of that moment, not of what they remember from 5 years ago when they were doing it, but what was it like today, you know, and that has been so much fun. What other questions, guys? Other things?
Question I have as a prospective student would be if there's been any previous courses, given that this is online, where you look at or examine COIL or virtual exchange as a modality, you know, like to take advantage of the format, but also are you, you know, somebody previously mentioned that there was a partner institution in, I believe, Ecuador, but that's for travel currently. Do you partner with them in this program specifically to accommodate people who are not likely to be able to take 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off to go abroad, as much as we would all love to do that? You know, some people have kids and other life responsibilities, and so I wonder if is there been consideration, or are you already actively doing it, adding COIL to this particular program?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing that sort of thing. Like, you know, like Brian said, we were doing online before it was cool. I mean, Sangeeta, I think you have the actual data from Bill's comments recently about when we actually started engaging like this. And so there's really nothing in the virtual space, whether it be you know, working with classrooms or doing joint lectures. You know, they're everything you can imagine. We've been doing it for years. Before it was cool, right? Before it had names and before other people were thinking about it. Part of that is, we're a part of, since 1998. So like, computers were they weren't even a thing, right? And we were already, we had our online programs. But so a lot of what we do is, we have a lot of organizational sort of networks, right, that we work through. So for example, in the Global Studies program, I think the main place that you would experience that would be in classrooms where we're bringing in other classrooms, to do things. So for example, either former faculty or sometimes former students who are now somewhere else, doing some sort of partnership with us. And typically that would be around some sort of project. It wouldn't necessarily be like, let's just observe each other. It would be around something particular that we're doing. But, that's pretty common. And then the other thing we've been doing that I hope we can get back to doing more is more exchange among our graduate students, just for short-term sort of conference exchanges. That was something that we had just started. Mike's nodding. You were a part of that, where we were, for our graduate student conference, like the one that Erin did, we started working with Hong Kong University. They're a longtime buddy of ours. And so we were doing this actual exchange, like not just virtual, but actual, like get on an airplane and go, right? And the thing that was cool about that is it made sense for grownups. Because if you have kids and you have a life and you have a day job, you could still probably go for 3 days to a conference. And if you do that, it's an amazing experience because you're dropped right in. And so it's not like your typical study abroad. It's something that you can actually do, right? Even if you're not able to do a full study abroad program. So yes to all virtual things, everything you can imagine, but also yes to real thing, in-person things, not this year, but in general, we have really tried to think about, what does that look like? What does it look like for you to get to go and present your research at a conference in Hong Kong and then, help fund it so that it's possible? And then what does that do? How do you then pay that back? So then you tell us a little bit more about what your experience was like, and it sort of adds to the overall, for the people that didn't get to do that. So we're trying to do it, both ways. So there's the online piece that's always been there, or, always since 1998, where we're doing all this virtual everything and all sorts of variations on that, all sorts. And then we have versions of study abroad that are for grownups. So short-term or super short-term experiences where you go and present or do some particular thing that's a part of the program too.
Do you mind if I ask another question?
No, sure, go ahead.
Like Mary Beth, I don't want to, take over, but
no.
Another question I had is, again, somebody else alluded to the fact that you're able to take courses from across the institution, not just limited to the department itself. And so how does that work in the online space? I imagine, I would assume that there are certain courses that they haven't navigated to online instruction, and those would be sort of out of bounds just for logistical reasons. But how, are there a wide host of online offerings?
Yes, there's a wide host of online offerings. So this year, everything was online, right? Like there were no on-campus courses, so everything's been online now. And even before that, though, in the graduate space, increasingly, Illinois is, providing sort of that alternative. So for a wide array of courses. You would have opportunities to do them online, all sorts of things. Now, the difference is, the thing to keep in mind about that is that the program itself, the courses are 8 weeks. But if you are doing something outside of our college, it would be 16 weeks. It could still be online, but it will probably be 16 weeks. And so you have to do a little bit of, planning to make sure that that's going to work for you, because you might have 2 classes in the College of Education in the time that you have 1 class in, say, liberal arts and sciences or something like that. So we have synced up the courses within our program really well, but we haven't synced up the whole university. And so if you want to go outside, which we definitely want you to do, and we will help you in whatever way we can, but at the same time, there will be a little bit of scheduling where you got to kind of think about, okay, this class is going 16 weeks, this one's going 8, and then I've got another one coming 8. It gets a little discombobulated, but there's so many opportunities, particularly in international spaces, because we have the area study centers. How many is it, Mike? Is it 6? Hey, look at me.
Right now it's 10. Yeah, we now
10.
have 10. Yes.
Okay, 10.
Right.
I was close. I was very close.
Yes. We have 10 last key center areas. That's the National Resource Center and the thematic the programs around the world. So they formulated the IGI in the year 2019. Yes.
Yeah, so 10 different area study centers, all offering amazing courses, all great, that you should definitely do. So, the problem is going to be narrowing it down because you're going to want to take 18,000 classes. Well, you can't. So you're going to have to, pick some stuff. And that's really, really, really hard because they're all amazing. I still want to take everything. I've been here forever and I still want to take classes. You will not be able to ever get to the bottom of it. There's
life.
All amazing. So.
Yeah, and I would just wonder that it probably varies from department to department as to what platforms they're using too, right? So it may not just be a Zoom class; it'll be I don't know if you use Canvas or whatever platform you use.
That's changing. The campus is trying to get us all corralled, so we're all going to be Canvas, right, Sangeeta? We're all going to be Canvas. Right now, we're kind of all different things, but the campus is telling us, come on, guys, get it together. So they're going to make us all do Canvas, which is fine. So when is that going to happen, Sangeeta? Is it next year?
Right, fall 2022.
Yeah.
Hopefully the migration will be all done.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat at my institution.
You guys used to have Blackboard?
Yeah, we currently have Blackboard. We're in the process
That's why.
They're a 1-year overlap before Blackboard has to.
Yeah.
They're going out of that LMS business, so we all have to.
Yeah.
Everybody's changing, and this is the moment when campus is like, okay, let's get this sorted. Well, they're all up in the air. Let's quickly get this knocked down. So, yeah.
So are we ready to wrap up?
Yeah, does everybody have my, I'm just going to put my email in the chat really quick. And I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists. You guys are amazing. And thank you so much for taking time and spending more time on Zoom, which I know you just probably needed today, on Zoom for a change, right? So thank you so much. And for any prospective students that want to talk to me, I'm just putting my email here. It's awit1@illinois.edu, and feel free to reach out and we can certainly arrange a one-on-one time to chat if you want to. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. They had to remind me several times they were not alumni, but they were still students. I kept referring.
They will be alumni if I let them leave. I'm really not.
They were like,
I'm okay to
become alumni.
That
means they leave us. They don't
hopefully in like a year and a half.
Yeah.
breaking my heart.
We will be we are
No.
proud of you
We're not
now, and we'll be
leaving.
proud of you when you become alumni, for sure. So
And
thank
we'll
you
make
so
you
much.
come back and do presentations because I
Yes.
you. So I'm gonna make you come back. You can never.
Definitely.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the
Appreciate it.
participants that are
Thank
here
you,
and
everybody.
that were here. And we'll be sharing the recording with all you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye.
take care.